Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 57, That Works. Boss Dazai Osamu returned to his own world, looked at the chaotic office, and fell into contemplation. Nakahara Chiya's attitude became a bit more respectful than before, but his words were still far from polite. This is your other self's doing, I don't know if I should stop it. Dazai Osamu sat in his chair, flipped through some documents. You may go. Nakahara Chiya frowned. You still haven't told me why you called me here. Nothing important. Dazai Osamu rested his chin on his hand, showing a thin smile that hadn't appeared for over 4 years. I just have a new idea. Nakahara Chiya stared at him for a few seconds. Never mind. It feels like after the 10-year bazooka, the air around him changes entirely, and even the dense aura of death dissipates slightly compares to before he was summoned. Had he found a new goal to survive? 4.5 years ago, there was a sudden shift in his style of action, a kind of attitude that burns one's life force. Recently, he felt that the other party seemed to be burning to the last ember, and calling him over was likely not good news. Unexpectedly, an unforeseen breakthrough happened, and it felt as if he had been reignited once more. Once again, the flame was just an unsteady flicker of a candle, likely to extinguish at any moment. However, as long as there wasn't a decision to take that one step, there should still be a chance to save it. Next, probably Akutagawa. Someone will come rushing in, you don't need to get involved, let Atsushi-kun handle it. Nakahara Chiya left. Dazai Osamu sat on the chair, flipping through a book leisurely, then casually swept the chaotic pile of documents on the table aside, leaving space for the book. Just then, the phone rang. Dazai Osamu glanced at the caller ID, then answered, Vangala. Dazai-san. The 19-year-old Vangala Decimo spoke from the other end, his attitude much stronger than when he was a child as he asked, have you already returned? Dazai Osamu immediately understood, the young version of me gave you a call? That's right. Sawada Tsunayoshi let out a sigh of relief, he was still complaining about how things were unstable. Since you've returned, the issue is resolved. Don't hang up yet, Vangala. Dazai Osamu said, as a victim of the 10-year bazooka, I have a few questions to ask. In the past, he heard about the 10-year bazooka effect, thinking that exchanging information with his future self 10 years later was meaningless. He had already grown weary of everything because he could see the ending at a glance. Moreover, possessing the book of this matter had made him see enough of his various futures, and he thought there was no need to learn anything from 10 years later just to save Oda-saku. But this time, unexpectedly getting hit by the effect allowed Dazai Osamu to realize that the 10-year bazooka was not just an empty name, it wasn't merely a tool for exchanging information with his future self 10 years later, but it could actually allow him to enter a parallel world. Originally, he thought he could only see it in the book, and back in reality, all he faced was Oda-saku's hostility and confusion. But this time made him realize, in truth, there were other ways. If there is a next time, not just in Hawaii, perhaps he might not only see Komai Dakuen again, but also see a different world of Oda-saku. He might even join Komai Dakuen and Oda-saku in their discussions. He originally thought that seeing Komai Dakuen would be enough for him to feel content before seeking death, but now he realized that humans are indeed greedy, and he was no exception. This kind of feeling, of having an empty hole in his chest gradually filled, once experienced, makes one want the next time. Right now, he's talking about seeking death, but as expected, he still can't quite accept it. Earlier, it was because he felt that the plan had gone well enough, and he originally had the idea of dying in his heart. Oda-saku's attitude merely added more weight to it. Now that the sense of hopelessness has passed, Dazai Osamu's relentless mindset to achieve his goal by any means necessary has once again taken the upper hand. Dazai Osamu wishes beautiful. He went to another world to enjoy himself a bit, because he abandoned the friendship with Oda-saku to save him. He made his counterpart from another world face Oda-saku from his world, so everyone could share the pain, and then wait for Oda-saku to accept the parallel theory. After that, he would return, and the world will immediately become better. After hanging up the Vongala phone, Dazai-Osamu picked up the documents about Komaeda Nagito and Oda Saku that had been casually stuffed into the drawer by his counterpart, and unconsciously smiled a bit. As expected, perhaps existence can bring about something good. When will it be next time, I wonder? In another world, under his guidance, Komaeda Nagito finally admitted that he was the friend of Dazai-Osamu, ultimately taking a difficult small step forward. Komaeda Nagito's suicidal tendency is like fire, his emotions radiate outward, and for an ideal, he is willing to burn himself like a martyr, grand and intense. Dazai-Osamu's suicidal tendency, on the other hand, is like water, his emotions are more inward-facing, gradually taking his life from within, as if sinking into the cold depths of the ocean, calmly and rationally watching himself perish. They are similar, but in reality, there are significant differences between them. However, because of their similarities, the differences are also highlighted more distinctly. Dazai-Osamu realized this right from the beginning. After overcoming this point of conflict, he was willing to put in a bit more genuine effort towards Komaeda Nagito. But Komaeda Nagito never could understand this, and he subconsciously continued to maintain a distance from Dazai-Osamu. It wasn't until this time when Dazai-Osamu deliberately guided him that he was finally willing, due to a misunderstanding, to overlook that subtle conflict. Although Dazai-Osamu's methods were somewhat deceitful, it was merely to simplify a long-winded process, allowing Komaeda Nagito to face himself a bit sooner. He didn't feel guilty at all, instead, he even felt a sense of satisfaction. Compared to another version of himself in a different world, he really was a winner in life. Although they were both himself, when he saw the other version in such a miserable state, he felt nothing like the sympathy of a rabbit for a dying fox. Instead, he felt incredibly fortunate that he himself wasn't that unlucky. If he had to put it into words, it was roughly that he had become wary of another version of himself, afraid that the other might lose control of his mindset due to the disparity and start desiring something that didn't belong to him. You actually gave him Oda Saku's book. Dazai-Osamu was still chatting with Komaeda Nagito and showing his dissatisfaction. Honestly, Oda Saku only signed 3 copies, and you gave him one of them. What else? What else did he say? There's really nothing. Komaeda Nagito spoke, his mouth dry, unable to help but say, I already said it 3 times from the start, Dazai-kun clearly doesn't trust my judgment enough. I'm really sorry, but I had no other choice. Or perhaps Dazai-kun can find an ability user who can retrieve memories to let you see mine. Dazai-Osamu, unfazed by the jab, replied, Of course I trust you, Komaeda-kun. Here, have some water. Komaeda Nagito accepted the bottle of water that Dazai-Osamu had opened, taking a few gulps to ease his throat. Kudo Shinichi had just returned from swimming in the sea, drying his hair with a towel as he asked, Done talking yet? Want to go swimming? What about volleyball? A day ago, Kudo Shinichi was still a staunch materialist warrior, but now he believed that there truly were abilities in this world. Those people were definitely using abilities to play volleyball on the beach. He definitely wasn't going to risk his life there. Yes, if we're at the beach, of course we should go play in the sea, right? Komaeda Nagito, after drinking some water, regained his energy. I hope I don't get stung by a jellyfish, pinched by a crab, or tangled up in seaweed. Ha ha ha, I was just casually saying it, seems a bit of a downer, huh? Kudo Shinichi's face was full of words that couldn't be expressed. Senpai, did you often encounter things like that before? It's not really that often, but I haven't gone to the beach too many times, Komaeda Nagito recalled. Speaking of which, the last time I went to the beach was during that case on Reigo Island. Unfortunately, we were in a hurry to investigate, and I was turned into a cat, so I didn't even have time to enjoy the sea. Turned into a cat. Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but confirm, did I hear that wrong? Do you mean the kind of turned into a cat I'm thinking? Yeah. The one who answered him wasn't Komaeda Nagito but Dazai-Osamu. I even took a few photos of Komaeda-kun as a cat. But I won't let you see them. Kudo Shinichi squinted at Dazai-Osamu. Dazai-san, how old are you this year? Could you not be so immature? Komaeda-senpai is much more mature than you. Acting like this, how can you be in the underworld? In the end, the three of them harmoniously went to the seawater area that almost reached their thighs and played for a bit, while Dazai Osamu also demonstrated some, how to pretend to be a drowning corpse, skills. What use are skills like that? Ah! Kudo Shinichi shouted, his voice echoing across the entire stretch of the sea. Of course, it's useful. Dazai Osamu straightened his body once more and said, for example, there seemed to be a corpse over there, I can tell it's not pretending. Kudo Shinichi turned his head sharply. In the end, today didn't go well. Kudo Shinichi made it ashore to report the emergency, and the police quickly came. Moreover, they expressed suspicion towards the entire Italian long-established mafia Vangola family. Obviously, it's not them. Ah. Kudo Shinichi seemed anxious. Which criminal is that arrogant, anyway? Besides, they basically don't know each other at all. What's wrong with the American police? Kudo Shinichi really wanted to take a look at the body, but normally police wouldn't allow a 14-year-old foreigner to approach a corpse, so the information Kudo Shinichi obtained wasn't much, and he could only be stopped outside like an ordinary person. Ah, no, that's wrong. Kudo Shinichi, as the closest witness, was immediately called aside by the police for questioning. He cooperated and told the police everything he knew, though of course, whatever the police learned, they wouldn't share with him. Kudo Shinichi was quite frustrated. Dazai Osamu and Komai Nagi-to were also questioned, and after their information matched with Kudo Shinichi's, they were released. By the way, Dazai Osamu used his identity as a consultant for Tei Corporation to leave the country, unlike Vangola, which made such an obvious and conspicuous appearance, so he successfully got treated as an ordinary passerby and was let go. Kudo Shinichi, although he had just met the Vangola members and didn't entirely grasp what the Vangola family truly represented, trusted his own eyes. This so-called heir to the mafia family, Sawada Tsunayoshi, appeared far more innocent than the self-proclaimed, ordinary consultant, Dazai Osamu. In fact, many of the so-called members were around his own age, with some even being young children. Perhaps they might kill people in the future, but at least for now, Kudo Shinichi felt that innocent people were just that, innocent. Unfortunately, he didn't have the authority to help prove their innocence. Komai Nagi-to remained indifferent and aloof for a moment, then said coldly to Kudo Shinichi, so, Kudo-kun needs to hurry up and become a great detective, otherwise the police won't listen to you. Kudo Shinichi responded reluctantly, if it were my father. Kudo Yusaku, despite being in America, was unexpectedly famous, and even Yukiko was well known as the Night Baroness. Only Kudo Shinichi's words were entirely ineffective. As he spoke, he instinctively looked up to find his mother, noticing her just ending a phone call and heading toward them. Your dad said, there's too little information, can't determine the perpetrator, but he can roughly guess who. This should be the recent serial killer case in the United States. I should remind the police to contact the FBI, they're investigating this case. If the FBI is in charge of the case, then the chance for Kudo Shinichi to get involved would be even smaller. Kudo Shinichi sighed in frustration. Dazai Osamu, who had gone out for a stroll at some point, returned and said, seems like there's nothing to do today, shall we head back to the hotel? Even if he hadn't said that, everyone would have had to return to the hotel. The police also left them with contact information, suggesting that they go back. After all, they couldn't wait until the case was solved to leave, could they? Who knows how long that might take? After returning to the hotel, they realized that the atmosphere there had changed as well. After all, many tourists had booked this hotel, and it was impossible for the occurrence of a murder case not to affect them at all. Kudo Shinichi hurried back to his room to discuss today's case with his father, quickly saying his goodbyes before leaving. Meanwhile, Komai Nagi-to and Dazai Osamu returned to their room together to rest for a while. Dazai Osamu, after finishing his bath, came out at the time when Komai Nagi-to was sending news to Little Raccoon. He briefly mentioned the case he encountered to Little Raccoon, who unreservedly criticized with a laugh, we know this person, his method of committing crimes is really crude, the police are too stupid. Komai Nagi-to didn't take the evaluation from someone who is good at writing detective novels to heart. After all, compared to meticulously designed locked-room murder cases and other intricate plans, most cases probably seemed quite crude in Little Raccoon's eyes. Komaeda Nagi-to, we're back at the hotel now. Little Raccoon, he's probably still at the hotel. According to past habits, he would want to kill the dead person's boyfriend next before leaving. The body being found at sea so soon was unexpected. If he moved fast enough, the police wouldn't have arrived before he finished killing the boyfriend. This mishap exposed him prematurely, and now his next actions will be more rushed. He wants to finish before the FBI catches up. Dazai-Osamu leaned over to glance at Komaeda Nagi-to's screen, raising an eyebrow. Who's this now? A mystery novelist. Dazai-Osamu read the contact's name, Little Raccoon. He remembers, Komaeda Nagi-to had mentioned an online detective novel author pen pal in America, and indeed it seemed like that person is a bit smart. Komaeda-kun unexpected had a lot of friends, huh? Komaeda Nagi-to paused his typing, thought for a moment, and replied, no, he's not a friend, just someone I know. I don't even have the qualifications to become his friend. Probably only a renowned detective like Edogawa Ranpo could become his friend? If Komaeda Nagi-to purposely mentioned Edogawa Ranpo instead of the nearby Kudo Yusaku, Dazai-Osamu naturally understood that this little raccoon might have some sort of connection with Edogawa Ranpo. Edogawa Ranpo's name was something Dazai-Osamu had heard of as well. After all, the armed detective agency is relatively similar to the Port Mafia. Although there wasn't much direct conflict between them, because Mori Ogai had taken notice, Dazai had also reviewed some of their intel. Edogawa Ranpo has never left the country. Although he is very famous locally, it shouldn't be to the extent that a detective novelist across the ocean would know him. So, did this little raccoon visit Japan, even Yokohama, and have a duel with Edogawa Ranpo? Dazai-Osamu had nearly uncovered all of Little Raccoon's secrets just from Komaeda Nagi-to's mention of Edogawa Ranpo. But to him, it was simply a matter of logic. Once the conclusion was reached, he tossed it aside. What did he write? Komaeda Nagi-to said sadly, I need to use a computer now. But I've already shared a copy with Kudo-kun. If you want to see it, you can ask Kudo-kun. Dazai-Osamu. Or Oda-san, I also sent him, but sometimes there may be inconvenient parts. Dazai-Osamu. He felt left out. Who else did you give it to? Dazai-Osamu couldn't help but ask, let me think, Kudo Yusaku? Kudo-kun said he wanted to show it to Yusaku-san, and Little Raccoon-san said it was fine to spread it within a small range, so he agreed. After that, it was Ayatsuji Yukido-sensei, and there were no others. Dazai-Osamu calmly thought about it. After all, they were all people he knew, which suggested that Komaeda-kun's social circle hadn't gone beyond what he was aware of, which could count as useful information, right? Later that evening, when they received a message from Kudo Yukiko to have dinner at the hotel restaurant, Komaeda Nagi-to looked at the waiter who was serving the food and stared at him unusually for 2 seconds before looking away. Dazai-Osamu sighed upon seeing the scene. I thought Komaeda-kun's social relations were quite simple. Was that the FBI just now? You even knows the FBI? Kudo Shinichi, who had been talking with Mori Rang, was startled and turned his head to ask, FBI? Kudo Yusaku, who had also been speaking with his wife earlier and hadn't noticed the person serving the dishes, now heard Dazai-Osamu's speculation and said, Shinichi, calm down a bit, don't let them be exposed. They're probably looking for the suspicious person. The FBI hasn't been mentioned in the news, but now the FBI appears, which means they probably guessed the criminal's movement trajectory, but haven't identified the individual yet. Therefore, they don't want to alert anyone and can only inconspicuously search the area for any suspicious people. Komaeda Nagi-to isn't really sure. Dazai-kun's reasoning is that this case involves the FBI, so he inferred the other person's identity based on some special physical characteristics, right? But if he's not mistaken, this one called Akai Shuichi from the FBI should currently be undercover at that liquor factory organization. So, is this ultimately an FBI mission or an organization mission? The answer didn't take long to be exposed. As Komaeda Nagito and the others finished their dinner and left the dining hall, on their way back to their rooms, a strange noise suddenly came from the public toilet nearby. Right after that, a figure rushed out and grabbed the closest person, Komaeda Nagito. "Don't move." The person pointed a gun at Komaeda Nagito's temple, "Or I'll kill him." A moment later, another figure stepped out of the public toilet, a large, somewhat simple-looking man. He looked apologetically at Akai Shuichi, who had rushed over from around the corner, and said, "Sorry, Akai-san, I've been found." Akai Shuichi held his forehead. They deliberately set the ambush at a location with not many people, the restroom, precisely to avoid situations like this and prevent causing a commotion among the crowd. Yet, this still got exposed. Could it be that the FBI's acting skills standard is really that low? He looked toward the hostage and realized it was someone he knew, a boy he had seen before on the rooftop, who seemed to know Bourbon. He hadn't expected to see him here in America, let alone in such a situation as a hostage. The good news was that this hostage didn't seem nervous at all, so they wouldn't become a burden when they figured out a way to rescue him. Hopefully, he could maintain this calmness throughout. "Quite a lot of accidents, Komaeda-kun." Dazai-osamu remarked with a sigh, "Your shoelace really comes undone at the worst times." Indeed, Komaeda Nagito actually had enough time to dodge this unexpected situation, but because his shoelace suddenly came undone, and he squatted down to tie it, he lost the chance to counter. Since Dazai-osamu knew too much about Komaeda Nagito's background, and was aware of the fates of those who had kidnapped him, he wasn't particularly worried. The Kudo family and Mori Rang, who were nearby, were kindly asked by the FBI to stay away. Initially, they also wanted Dazai-osamu to move back, but the remaining FBI agents hadn't yet approached before they were threatened and pushed back by the criminal. "You move back too?" the criminal said to Dazai-osamu. Dazai-osamu pondered for a few seconds. "It might not be too appropriate for me to say this, but that revolver caliber you're holding isn't really suitable for this kind of action. When you press the trigger, the casing could hit you in the eye." The criminal was stunned, then immediately became enraged. "Shut up. It's none of your business." As the criminal wavered, Dazai-osamu squinted his eyes, stealthily took a step forward, but was pulled back by an FBI who thought he was a weak, pitiful, and helpless bystander. "It's dangerous, don't get any closer." Missing a good opportunity, Dazai-osamu sighed inwardly, but he didn't seem to mind much. In fact, he was even looking forward to Komaeda Nagito's reaction. Dazai-osamu looked on expectantly, while Komaeda Nagito gave his opinion. Could you maybe loosen up a bit? I feel like it's a little hard to breathe." "Shut up. Shut up, shut up." Feeling even his hostage despised him, the criminal's emotions grew more agitated. He nervously eyed the approaching FBI group. Though it was only 5 or 6 individuals, it still kept him on edge. In this situation, the chance of breaking through is very low, and there's a risk of being ambushed, so he took step by step to retreat toward the corridor on the other side of the patio. The open space on 3 sides made him relax a little, and he felt that this way he could only deal with it head-on. "This is a foreigner, you all should think carefully before playing that scenario of taking out the hostage without having a hostage." The FBI group's expressions were tense. Indeed, as it was an international friend, they couldn't act too crudely. At the very least, they had to put on an effort. "Calm down a bit. Do you have any demands? You can tell us now." The perpetrator sneered coldly. "I want." At this very moment, everyone watched in astonishment as something suddenly fell from above, perfectly landing on the head of the criminal standing on the patio. For a moment, it seemed like everyone had stopped breathing, and only Dazai-osamu let out a "wow" in admiration. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the criminal maintained a bewildered expression, rolled his eyes, and fell backward. Seeing such a scene, everyone sighed in relief. They hadn't expected that a serial killer could be dealt with so easily. Just as they were about to move forward to finish things off, another unexpected incident occurred. The criminal only fell when he touched the handrail in the patio. The handrail seemed to have no safety function at all, directly detaching from its fixed point and falling away. The criminal, who had already lost consciousness, also tumbled outward. Everything happened too quickly, almost simultaneously. In fact, as he was falling, he even grabbed Komai de Nagito's neck, causing Komai de Nagito to lose his balance as well. Unable to escape in time, they both fell together, and the next moment screams echoed from downstairs. Komai de-kun. Dazai Osamu's expression finally changed. He pushed aside the FBI agent in front of him, rushed to the edge of the balcony, and looked down. Upon realizing the ground was closer than he imagined, he let out a sigh of relief. This was only the 3rd floor. There was someone cushioning the fall, right? It should be, alright, shouldn't it? Chapter 57 End.